Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ale. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, guys.
So I was just saying that, we've been doing the outdoor photo series for a while to, in a way, take advantage of this time off that many of us have had, with this craziness of the pandemic. It has given us all a chance to regroup, recharge, rethink things, and take a little bit of time off from the regular madness. Ale will tell us a little bit more about his background and how he started. And I've known him now for a long time, but I'm actually excited because this gives me a chance to talk to him with calm today and to learn a lot about some of his adventures. He's always jumping on planes and getting on to his next assignment. And so this gives everybody a chance to get to know some of the behind the scenes of some of the stories. Ale is an award-winning photographer who has been shooting for Red Bull, Nat Geo, the Off Channel in Brazil, which is a really popular outdoor channel in Brazil. And he has won a number of awards and probably knows more about photography than just about anybody else. So, Ale, thank you again. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how you started in photography? What led you in this path to where you are today?
Since I was a kid, I've been around outdoor sports. And I was very, very lucky to have friends in adventure race who invited me to join them and give it a try. Adventure race is one of the singular sports that give you like possibilities to create and reinvent yourself as a photographer every single minute. Being outside shooting a sport that you have no idea what the weather is going to be and what you're going to face as challenge in the middle of the environment. That brought me a lot of good backgrounds to deal with any kind of things. Magazines and websites, it all came so fast into my professional life that was almost like a dream come true. You know, when you're a teenager and then you say, oh, I want to be an astronaut or something. Collecting, reading my grandfather National Geographic collection, and I was fascinating about working on National Geographic, not exactly as a photographer. I just wanted to be around adventure, if you know what I mean. And just in less than a decade after I started shooting, and I have photos published in National Geographic, that was so cool for me and everything else. So yeah.
So Ale, you were one of the first photographers, if not the first, I believe, signed by Canon, Brazil, to be a representative of their professional service. Is that right?
Yeah, that was another partnership. I've been shooting Canon since ever. That was my choice as professional photographer. Before that, I was shooting Nikon because my father had a Nikon, but it was analogic.
Interesting.
It was, like an 80s camera, the Nikon FE. When I signed with them for the first time in Brazil, that was pretty cool. I mean, even the company here didn't know exactly what to do. Spent a few times like trying to figure out what would be interesting for both parts.
I kind of interrupted your story because I was just going to say that obviously you don't get there by accident. And so when you first started shooting, you had an interest for it. Obviously your dad had cameras and you were shooting already because you enjoyed it and you wanted to do it. What were some of your early jobs, early gigs? Were you just shooting because you enjoy them and then your work got discovered? Were you submitting your work to agencies? Were you submitting your work to organizations that were shooting events? How did that happen? How did that transition into professionalism happen?
I didn't expect to be a professional photographer. I didn't expect to work with photography, to have money out of it. But I graduated in physical education, and just after university, I decided to travel and to learn English. That was my goal. After university, I decided to choose a place in the globe that could put together all the things I love the most, and the place I chose was New Zealand. And I spent a whole year there working and studying. And I remember one of the places I lived, I had a Japanese friend who was a outdoor photographer. He was actually a scuba diver photographer, which was amazing because I already I scuba dived since 1997, I think, or something like that. And I was always passionate about it. But for me, it was a huge step even to get into photography, right? But that was the first time I brought a camera, a digital camera ever, 2002 to 2003. And it was a little Sony, I remember, 2 megapixels. And I spent almost $2,000 on that camera back in the time. That was, I remember I started shooting and showing to friends and the family I was living with back in that time, and they were like, "Oh my God, man, you have some cool angles and stuff." I didn't know nothing about editings and things like that. I was, of course, shooting everything in JPEG, and I came back a year later with one CD, probably full of photos of New Zealand. And and that was 2004. So it took me almost 2 years after that, year and a half, to decide to get into photography. And just because friends were saying, "Man, you have something you should try. You have good angles. I like your photos," and stuff like that. So I had a friend in the gym I was teaching as a professional personal trainer. He was an adventure race athlete, and he asked me to join his team to one of the races in Brazil, and it turns out that it was the biggest race, and one of the biggest in the world. Actually, it was the biggest in Brazil, one of the biggest in the world. Just like the turning point for everything. After the race, they were sharing my photos around, and the organizers started to ask me to join their racers to shoot as a professional, and that's how everything started.
Often talk to professional photographers, and I ask them this question: do you feel like you've developed a style, or does that just happen and you're kind of, going with the flow, and you don't feel like you're trying to get a particular look, and it just kind of happens?
No, for sure. Since the beginning, I choose to try everything different than they usually do. Looking for some sports photographies, I was there to watch what I didn't want to do, basically.
Sure.
I wanted to try something different. I wanted to be lower or closer to the athlete, or and back in the days, and this is a funny story. Outex did a huge difference, especially because back in the day, 2007, 2008, you didn't even have like GoPros. Get a special angle, and especially like in the water, close to the water, inside the mud, or it doesn't matter if you're in the sand or something. You have no choice unless they like break your camera, like I lost a few, or get a cover that could be like easy to bring and easy to wear. So these photos in particular that you're showing right now, this was, I remember, one of the best angles ever before you have any kind of small cameras that you could put inside like places or in the corners. I was hanging on that waterfall like literally in the edge. If you see the area with no water in her face, that's because my body was covering. It made a huge difference in that
career.
Yeah, when I was shooting exclusive for adventure race. So yeah, just like right there, I'm rappelling with her, same waterfall in a parallel rope, and shooting with a DSLR. So now and then, I mean, today is kind of okay imagery because you have GoPro at whatever, and any kind of camera, small camera that can go in the water, and it's easy to place it, right? But back in the day, shooting with a DSLR, this angle was like something that people didn't see. That's one of the painful jobs ever in my life.
You got pelted a few times.
And that's a blame. That's the one I blame Outex for sure, because I was invited for Brazilian paintball
championship.
Yeah, to join them and try something different. And I asked them to go inside. You can see me laying down there in the background. So when the organizers said, "You want to go inside? Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, man. Don't you have something to protect me? I just want to be as close as possible to the action." And they laughed at me. And there was, after the first draw, I understood that a few competitors should be in purpose. I was just there, and nobody staying in the middle ever. And this is so fast and so painful because they use like pro guns, right? So it's faster.
Yeah, no, that's true baptism by fire.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is that I could bring to them some kind of angles that they even could understand it had and happened in the middle of the competition. And that was more or less everything I was involved with photography I was trying to do. I was trying to bring to the ones who brought me inside something different. Right.
Yeah, now I think that your ability to capture the action by getting into it is right on. And, you know, I've sort of learned to identify a lot of your shots even before I know they're yours. Let's talk a little bit about the gear, because you sort of developed into shooting Canon, and I think you had different bodies that you use, different lenses. Walk us through your gear selection, the cameras, the lenses, and the rationale for the specific type of photography that you do and that you've done.
Yeah, so for me, one camera, one body and a couple of lenses is not an option at all. First, because I know something can happen. All these places, every race or every expedition we do, they are in the middle of the wild, and you have like no place to go if something happen with your gear. So I always choose to work at least with two bodies and a bunch of lenses. Of course, after I was in partnership with Canon, that was so easy to get cameras and lenses that was even unfair. I was almost bored all new stuff in the market and could try a lot of new things even before going to market, which was amazing. Today, 3 cameras are what I use. One usually stay covered, and I had two to be carrying around, and then just to be fast if I need to change some lenses or stuff. But I use three bodies and a bunch of lenses too.
What are the cameras, the bodies and the lenses that you are using?
Oh, so right now I'm using 5D Mark IV, the 1DX Mark II, and I now have a Olympus Panasonic GH5.
GH5. Do you use that for video mostly?
I use that for video. Yeah, I don't shoot stills with that one. I don't like much else.
Yeah, that's a very popular camera for video. It shoots really great video.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, do you have specific lenses that you use for each of those bodies, like for the 5D Mark IV versus the 1DX?
Always a zoom lens and a wide angle already to go, right? So in the Outex, or if I'm shooting underwater scuba diving or with the housing, I always have the 14mm or the A15 fisheye.
Okay.
Those are the ones I use the most in water, and so it's built already there.
Okay.
The other two, I usually have a 70-200 with extension if I need it, and probably a 24-70 or sometimes a 82 or something like that.
Okay. And do you always shoot on manual? Do you have certain settings that for each camera? Because it sounds like you've got a couple of different cameras with the different lenses so that you have in mind the shots that you're trying to get. Do you have specific settings that you aim for, or do you modify them as you go?
No, I always shooting manual. And I remember in the beginning of Outex, when you couldn't even see much inside the cover.
The first generation, yeah.
It was a challenge, but I prefer to lose a few photos in purpose than to have the option to put in AV or TV that I could lose like a bunch. So, I try to be in control most of the time with the camera, because this is for me is essential. Like it's something that I'm used to. It was good the first generation of Outex. I could learn everything just touching. I didn't have to see where the buttons were. Hard but fun.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think that also applies to different technologies. I talk to a lot of photographers that learn to shoot with film. You know, they transition to DSLR, and some photographers are transitioning or already using mirrorless. And often the harder technologies, in a way, are good because they teach you to be that much better. They make you work harder in understanding how the technology works, how you get the most out of the camera, out of the lens. And then simply by having better technology later on just makes your job easier, because now you're faster, you know, you're more flexible into the kinds of photos you can get. And we heard that loud and clear as well with the first generation Outex product not being transparent. We had a much smaller market of users, people like you that really knew their cameras and the lenses intimately, so they could still get the results that they needed. But with the transparent covers now, you know, it just really opens up in a number of ways. Tell us a couple of, you know, because there are so many stories and shoots that I find memorable. You know, I know you've done a trip to Jalapão that we got a lot of great footage from. You know, you've done the shark swim with KARINA Oliani. You know, you've done the kayaking jump off of SVALBARD. So maybe take us through some of those shoots and kind of give us a little bit of the behind the scenes of how they came about, you know, what it was like, And tell us a little bit, because we see those images and they're magical, but it makes you wonder, you know, the how it happened. So maybe just bring up a couple of projects that you don't mind sharing with us and giving some behind the scenes.
For sure, man. And funny thing is, I often had people asking if this is Photoshop or something. Mm-hmm. And I understand, but trust me, there is no Photoshop in any of photos. I don't modify photos. I use Lightroom to editing, get away with some dirt or something in the lens or stuff like that. But people often ask if it's Photoshopped, and I have an interesting event that happened with the shark photos with KARINA. The first week we launched them in Europe, we haven't the footage for the shooting ready, so we just released the photos. And a week later, the editor from I don't remember what magazine, but he said, "Look, man, there was a very cool photos, but you know, people doesn't want to buy because they are photoshopped." Man, trust me, this is not Photoshop. And then we gave them the footage of the behind the scenes. And it was at every place, photos of this exactly spot when people had the model there, but they put the shark on Photoshop. So I understand how people see those kind of photos. But then I also try to all the time have some behind the scene photos to show that this is real. This is like right in action. And also one thing that I learned, especially with adventure races, was like not to plan. We don't go there like a day before to check on the lights, to see if the sharks are there. We just give it a try, do our best. And that's why sometimes I usually say I'm lucky to have those kind of photos. People got mad on me, especially friends saying, "Oh, you're not lucky, you're just good professional," something like that. But it was like no planning, 3 hours inside the water, like that's it. What we're gonna have back is what we're gonna have back. And so this 3 or 4 works you mentioned was amazing. Also because of that, we didn't plan. The jump in Svalbard, that was something we had in mind. Ben Tewksbury, who was the guy jumping, which is one of the best kayakers in the world. It took us 13 days sailing to a point in Svalbard, so we had also to cross parallel 80, and that's something that most of the Marines guys did in their whole life on the seas. So it took us quite a challenge to get there, and then maybe we could do it, maybe not, and so we got lucky for sure.
Well, you know, I used to, there was a saying that we had in the locker room in college as an athlete, that luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And so I think, again, you're being humble in saying that, you know, it's luck, but, you know, it's all about the know-how that you have, the knowledge that you have in your mind about what it is, that story that you're trying to tell, what you're trying to capture, and at the same time having professionals at every level. Like you said, you know, using any model may not have worked for that shark dive that you did, but when the model knows what she's doing, when she's comfortable in that environment, when she's comfortable with the people she's working with, and when you have a support team around you, again with the Svalbard kayak jump, You know, you needed to have people that knew what they're doing around you, and that enables you to get all of these stars to align so that you can get the shot at the end. So there's a lot of work that goes into getting those shots. Was he able to rehearse it? Was he able to do it a couple of times and you got a couple of different shots? So he only did it once.
Yeah. So good news, we are launching my first book. It's about this trip, just because it was amazingly intense, and this jump in particular, they had to walk for 12 hours. So it was a chance in a lifetime, and that walk was after several days sailing to that point. And we are talking about end of summer in North atmosphere. And it was, I remember when the sun was shining, we had a temperature around 5 degrees, but most of the time we were like -10, -15, and the water was freezing as well. So it was the kind of, and we had the challenge to try not to see bears, right?
Yeah.
Because their environment, TVs from all around the globe go specifically to that place to film polar bears.
Yeah.
So we were there, we couldn't camp on land, so we were sleeping on the boat full time, and we were like very, very stressful.
Tired. Stressed, yeah.
Stressful about the whole situation, because it costs a lot of money as well,
Sure.
And when you work for Brazilian channel, you have the challenge of the difference in between currency as well. So for us, it was like everything we could save to get that done. We did a month before during like Norway trip. But anyway. So after that kind of 12 hours walking, that was it. That was one jump, and they brought only one kayak, and that's why only Ben jumped it, because the other two had to jump themselves or in the water, so we could rescue them. 12 hours walking.
Right. Yeah. Once again, showing like there's so much more to a shot than just the shot itself. The shot is kind of the tip of the iceberg, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you have, and I want to invite the audience to ask questions as well. So if anybody has questions, feel free to ask them and we'll answer them, not only here live, but even afterwards, we can always answer them as well. But I wanted to change gears a little bit and ask about mentors you've had, people that have helped you along the way, or people that you either idolized or emulated as you were, progressing within your professional career. Were there people that helped you get to where you are directly or indirectly?
For sure, in the beginning, like in the very beginning, when I had no idea even how to use a analogic camera, I had good friends helping me with, because they were already professionals. After that, I spent a year inside a studio, like a normal photo studio, shooting models and food plates, stuff like that, to learn and understand the light and to understand the whole professional environment with these photographers. But I didn't have like one guy I follow and I wanted to be like him. I had like inspirations with magazines such as National Geographic, for sure, that I was reading since I was a kid, and all these great photojournalists we have around the globe. A lot of Brazilian guys, especially Brazilians in the middle of the adventure race, around them as well, so I could learn a lot with those guys.
Okay. And these days, I know you've been involved with a lot of conservation efforts. So I was hoping you could talk a bit about some of the conservation efforts you've done, what you may have been doing recently, and share with the audience some of the more recent work you're doing.
The last 2 years I've been involved into some environmental and social projects, and that's because when I was shooting underwater, and we did a documentary, an 8 episodes documentary about underwater big animals. So we were traveling around the best places to dive in the world, and most of this was in the Bahamas. And I could, for the first time, see our impact with trash into the ocean. And it was for sure something that bothered me a lot. And I couldn't do anything as a hired photographer or something. I couldn't show this in the channels we were shooting for, or in the magazines we were shooting for. So I decided to start a movement on Instagram to show those pictures, to show how bad the situation were around the globe, that we couldn't understand. If you were sitting in your sofa in front of TV, watching those beautiful images we do and other professionals do in the Bahamas or New Zealand, doesn't matter where in the world, you have the surrounding is full of trash. And when I say it's full of trash, I've been to islands that have no one living in the middle of the Atlantic, full of trash, because the current brings everything from the rivers, and because of the gyros we have in the middle of the oceans. We have 5 big gyros in our planet. They concentrate trash, but they also throw trash around. So you easily can find different kind of trash in different kind of places that doesn't belong to that country or region, right? I decided to do this, and after a few years, I invited a few models and actresses from Brazil to do this photo shoot, where I decided to kill the mermaids to bring attention to the cause. You know, after a few images you see from whales dead on the sand and dolphins dead on the sand, that you start to feel like okay with that. And this is not okay, of course, but because the media shows a lot, you kind of, oh my God, one more, but you don't realize that it happens every day. So I decided to do with kind of humans, and that was huge. That was pretty good, amazing. It helped grow the net around this project, and so I started to do lectures about it. I started to show these photos all over, and I kind of get more interest into the problem itself. And then when I realized I was in Rio de Janeiro, inside the biggest favela we have in Brazil, and I start to understand that if you don't do the right job to go deep into the roots of the problem, you're never gonna change a thing. So for the last 2 years, I've been deeply involved into these social projects in Rocinha, and I'm very proud of people there, the ones who live and born there, into those very, very poor places.
So Rocinha is a huge shanty town in Brazil, for people that don't know. It's one of the largest in the city of Rio, where people basically, build their own homes on the side of a hill. And there's, how many people live there, Ale?
200,000 is the largest in South America. So we decided to do something, just a bunch of friends, good heart, like no external intentions, just bringing something to transform their lives, put food on the table, because this for sure is the most, it's the biggest problem when people have nothing to eat. How can you explain to them something? You can't.
Right, so in other words, you can't get people to be environmentally conscious if they can't even feed themselves. So, you know, I hear often, because we work with a lot of conservation people as well, and, you know, you often hear that poverty is the greatest polluter, because if people are just simply trying to survive, it's very hard for them to prioritize anything above it. And so you realize that a lot of this garbage is a result of these favelas or these shanty towns that are polluting the ocean. And then working with them was a result of that, right?
Yes. So if you, I believe, and now more than ever, because we are there for 2 years, and I believe those people can transform their lives if they have chance. Mm-hmm. If anyone gives them chance and then explain what is going on around, because that's the other thing, right? They live inside, they never leave, so they don't understand what is going on, like environmentally, you say. Mm-hmm. But once you say something or you try to bring into attention, they change super fast. Those are the kind of people who can transform anything in a second, because they are used to live in such hard conditions that they have to adapt themselves all the time, every time. So the response are amazing, and now I have such good friends over there, and I'm very proud of every one of those guys, and also the team behind those projects.
So we got a question from the audience about bringing trash back from when you go. And so I guess I have two questions related to that. Do you find that in a lot of the adventure work that you do, in the remote work that you do, whether it's for a television channel, for a magazine, do you find that the level of awareness of the whole crew is high in terms of conservation, and that people are good about not leaving the environment worse off than it was? And second, are there things that people can do to help those environments? In other words, are you bringing, when you do find garbage in these remote islands, are you finding yourself trying to collect it, trying to make it better, trying to get involved in organizations that are trying to clean them up?
So the first answer is unfortunately not. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people involved with tourism, people who help us to get into those places. So they usually are locals. Mm-hmm. And if you go to, I wouldn't say only for third countries. I have seen trash all over, and I've seen people from all kind of cultures not giving much attention to that. So it's popular for us. We can see often problems in any kind of environment. And of course, when we are diving or working in the wild, I try to bring everything I can. We even stop in a few situations. We had to stop filming to collect like ghost nets from the ocean. You know what ghosts are? We dove to cut the ropes, to take animals out of that. It kind of stopped the work we were doing just to try to solve that specific problem. But even so, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, even if you do this every day, even if every boat we know in the world could do that every day, you're not stopping, you're not closing the tap. Closing the tap means first, you had to understand where it came from. And then, second, but also important, why those people are doing this, why people in general are doing this, why they are not paying attention. And what I've seen till this moment in my career is that most of the problem is because people are far from nature. They are getting back, they are turning their back to nature more often for the last, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 decades. People are not going outside anymore. People are staying in their sofas, watching their TVs, plugging in and forgetting about outside. People see an ant or a cockroach, they freak out. If they see a spider inside their houses, the first thing is like, if you have a gun, they'll probably shoot the spider, right? Of course, I'm joking, but this is a huge problem because you're not giving the right attention to modern nature as you should, to understand that those steps we're taking are bringing us down, and is not fast, which is the most disturbing thing, because it's not going to happen in one generation. And that's what is giving with my kids, that look, everything we have to do right now is thinking to your kids, actually, is not, and not for you guys. So what I'm doing right now, I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna transform or change the way you guys gonna live in the world, but I'm pretty sure that if everything works, your children will be in a better environment. And that's a huge problem, because humans don't think on the future like that. We never think on the future like that, right?
Yeah.
So if we plant trees, it's just because we want a shadow. We don't think like, oh, this tree is going to give something to two generations after me.
On one hand, I think that there's more and more awareness of the impact we have and the importance, because of how fast things are happening, given the large effect that we as humans are having and how many of us there are. And therefore it's accelerating the speed, you know, to where maybe it's not your grandkids, it is indeed your kids that are going to suffer the impact. And then on the other hand, like you said, you've got sort of a double-edged sword, because you've got social media that brings attention to it, but on the other hand, it separates people from it. It only shows the positive, like you said. People are seeing beautiful things, but they don't understand that in the surroundings it's not so beautiful. So it's interesting, and maybe what we'll do, you know, we were talking the other day about having a like a panel, if you will, to talk about things related to subjects that we like. And maybe this is one of the topics that we should address, because there are several photographers we know, we work with, that make conservatism or conservation a theme of their work or a part of their work. And we even have content creators like Allison Teal that are, you know, living in environments like Hawaii that are suffering from some of those gyros that you're describing, and that can help, you know, contribute to conservation.
That's one thing we as professionals should pay attention a lot, because we are bringing to people the good environment, right? People are seeing our work, but they don't see the behind the scenes. And trust me, the behind the scenes are terrifying. They are just terrifying, you know? It's getting out there, we had a huge turn when Blue Planet 2 came out. Those guys did an amazing job. They changed a lot. I don't know if you know, but I remember UK turning their laws after Blue Planet 2. They're amazing, but it's still, we are talking for such a small group of people if you take the whole problem around the world. So what we have, I mean, it's our mission and it's almost our obligation to talk about it as much as we can and to show the world things we are seeing and how not to try not to do it, and how we can try not to do it, right?
We'll have to thinking about already in the near future, you know, are there adventure races that you're going to cover that you're hopefully excited about as they slowly come back? What's next?
Yeah, so unfortunately COVID took most of the things I was about to do this year down, and I had a great project that I hope I can go back next year as soon as everything comes into normal, or I don't know if it's gonna be back west, we know, but anyway. I was about to go to Perth in Australia. I have a very good friend that is not watching this live because he said it's about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's on the west coast of Australia, so they're almost opposite end of the world.
Yeah, but he lives in a place that you can just jump into the water and have white sharks and hammerheads. So that's one goal for me for sure, as soon as we can go back to travel. Also, Murilo, who you know was my business partner for a long time, he's living in Tasmania, which is one of the places most of the people I know have on the bucket list, and this travel will go through Tasmania as well. New Zealand, I've been going 9 years straight. Godzone is on 9 years now, and unfortunately they had to change for next year, and I'm looking for that. It's my, let's say, my second country, my second home. I love New Zealand, and I'm fortunate enough to be back every year, and yeah, I think that's it.
That's great. Yeah, no, I've been to Perth. I've not spent any time in New Zealand, even though we've gone through there a couple of times, and I'm dying to visit there as well. It's such a picturesque place. I think there are a lot of parallels. We have some friends there as well. There are a lot of parallels with the state of California, because you've got the ocean, you've got the mountains, you've got everything from sand dunes to jungle a little bit and some desert. All within close proximity, so that makes for a great photographer's playground. Those all sound wonderful. I've been seeing your pictures of the Godzone race for so long that I've been dying to go to visit and to see that. But I just wanted to say thanks so much again for spending a little time with us, sharing some of the behind the scenes. I am very much looking forward to an opportunity to getting together personally, hopefully, as things unlock and we resume activity. Hopefully we'll have a chance to go shoot together, spend a little more time. But thank you so much. All the best. Stay safe. Keep up the great work that you do, not only professionally as a photographer, but in terms of conservation, helping the favelas and bringing awareness to so many great causes. We need more people like you in the world.
No, man, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to come live and talk about it, those kind of things. I'm always up to it. If you need anything else about it, I'm on it.
You do the same, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thanks everybody who wrote there as well. We couldn't even talk about it, the question, but we do later.
We appreciate it, and thanks again. Stay safe, be well.
You too, man. Thanks.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Valeu.